Okay. Did not want to start the recording quite so early, but I've learned how to edit that. Okay, so
We won't get to start it since we already started it, right?
pause. Good afternoon. My name is Beth Drucker, and I'm the president of Go Green Wilmette and the co-facilitator of Go Green Illinois. My co-facilitator in this affiliation is Kim Stone. She's a councilwoman in Highland Park, and we are delighted to welcome people from about 25 different communities to our July meeting. And we are going to be talking about how we can work in our communities through our elected officials, through our advisory boards, to be the most effective advocates for sustainability as possible. We have with us, that would be going through creating ordinances, local policy and certification programs. And the format for this meeting is going to be a little bit different. After our speakers introduce themselves, it's going to be more of a panel discussion. Kim and I will be asking questions, but we'll also be looking for your questions in the chat. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat, and Kim and I will make sure, we'll do our best to make sure that all of your questions are answered. So we have with us 4 different experts that we think will be helpful to all of us. We have Rob Sabo. He's the city manager now for Rolling Meadows, but he was in Highland Park for quite some time and a colleague of Kim Stone's. We have James Johnson. He is an elected official from Skokie, and he has been very involved in sustainability issues since he was elected, and was deeply involved in a recent issue you may have heard about with the Carvana Tower, which was scheduled to be within a stone's throw of the Forest Preserve District. We will be hearing from Barney Clark. He's the chair of the Glencoe Sustainability Task Force. Glencoe does not have an active citizens group because most of the people in the citizens group ended up joining the Sustainability Task Force, and they are doing incredible work in their community using that as their format. And we also will be hearing from Martha Dooley. She is officially landscape and sustainability planner for the city of Schaumburg. Martha has been working in this field for 17 years in her community, and she has a lot of information for us. I also want to remind you that Kim Stone is an elected official in Highland Park, and she pretty much ran on a sustainability platform as one of her many interests. And so she has worked very, very closely with her community to make progress from the governmental side. So Kim, did you have anything else you'd like to mention before we start the program?
I'm still slightly freaked out by the number of people who are signed on named Kim Stone. So if you are signed on and your name is Kim Stone, but you are not me, can you please rename yourself using the 3 little dots in the upper right corner of your picture or your square if your picture's not on.
And if you don't mind, rename yourself, even if your name is correct, to add the community that you represent, because that's really helpful to all of us. So we know in a minute where everyone is from. And so with that, again, thank you very much for spending some time with us so that we can work together to make our communities and Chicagoland more sustainable. So with that, I would like to start off with Rob Sabo, who is going to give us a quick review of his background and what he's been able to accomplish in his community, maybe some challenges along the way. So Rob, you're on.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate the opportunity to present to everyone today and for being here. So as was introduced, prior to my arrival here in Rolling Meadows, I was the assistant city manager with the city of Highland Park. I was with the organization for about 6.5 years. And that was my first foray into sustainability. So historically, I've worked for 5 different municipalities. When I got to Highland Park, I was given the assignment of working on the city's sustainability program. And at the time, it was very much a figure it out kind of assignment. And I dove headfirst into it. Kim was a great resource for me in helping out with just what the historical work that the city has done and what the forward-thinking approaches the city was thinking of undertaking. And so in my time in Highland Park, I had the good fortune of having a sustainability plan that was formed already in 2010 However, what was observed, and this was around 2016, was that that sustainability plan may have not necessarily reflected the changes in technology, some of the more modern sustainability practices, and necessarily the policy desires of the city council at the time. And so we came up with a strategy to put together a shorter term sustainability plan and put together a 3-year sustainability plan approach, which would get revisited annually, but ultimately every 3 years we were preparing a new sustainability plan. The benefit of doing something like that was to keep it fresh. So I think in all of our communities and even private sector, you hire fancy consultants and you put together really nicely drafted documents that are hundreds of pages long, and those end up on shelves. And as staff comes and goes from your organization, they tend to get lost. And so what we wanted was for a sustainability plan that didn't end up just a dust collector on a shelf, rather something that the city council, the staff, the sustainability advisory group all could utilize on a regular basis to plan for the work that's coming down the pipeline, B, identify what are the initiatives that the city would like to focus on, also identify the successes that the organization had, because celebrating your successes is really important, and also lastly, planning financially. And so that document served well and has now been through a couple iterations, and I believe the city is now going into its third refresh of that document. In my current role for Rolling Meadows, I am coming into an organization that is just at the very beginning of its sustainability planning efforts. And right now we don't have a sustainability plan. We have a environmental committee that is focused on creating one. And so my efforts are going to be focused on supporting that committee as they explore what it is exactly that the organization's current sustainability components already are, and what are the things that we want to focus on as an organization. My role in the admin side is to figure out how to make these things happen. So as many of you know, without going through a government study, you have the legislative side, your elected officials who are the policymakers, then your staff who are there to carry out the day-to-day. And so as all of you work with your respective organizations, you know, the perspective that I take as the city manager is one of multiple questions. So typically as policies are introduced, the questions that I have are, how will we pay for this? Who will be the ones who implement the policy or the initiative? Who's going to be enforcing it? So if it's legislative, or is there going to be an enforcement component to it? I'll also be looking at, you know, how do we measure success? Is this something that is a SMART goal, where it's time bound, it's measurable, those types of components? Those are the types of things that I think all of the different administrators and managers in the respective communities that you're working with are looking at as policies are introduced and proposed. I think another thing that I offer to everyone here as far as a strategy as you're working with your respective communities is everyone's community is different. The policy perspective and profile is variant depending on the organization. And most importantly, I know those of us who really are passionate about sustainability want to see things happen quickly, but the reality is that within the municipal context, change just takes time. And so an important component of building that change is getting buy-in, which is something that, you know, we worked a lot on in Highland Park. Oftentimes there was the conversation of educate versus legislate. So, you know, working with the community and building up the buy-in with our residents so that they understood exactly what it is the city was necessarily advocating for, rather than putting it out there as an ordinance with, you know, various restrictions and potentially fines and citations if a violation were to happen. I think the other thing that's important is knowing that when you're working with an elected body, you have different perspectives and individuals with a variety of backgrounds, many of whom may not have sustainability backgrounds or may not understand all the different components of sustainability. The same applies on the municipal admin side. So when I went through my Master's in Public Administration program, sustainability wasn't yet on the horizon for MPA students to really take advantage of. I think that has changed in the last few years because of how important sustainability has become in the local government sphere. But all that being said, as you're working with your public works or community development or your manager's offices, I wouldn't necessarily assume that everybody has the same expertise or background that you have. So in some cases, there's going to be a bit of education that all of you have to do with your respective organizations to make sure that they're understanding and aware of exactly what it is that the organization, what you're asking the organization to be taking on or to consider. And so And the last thing I'll mention is the education versus legislation component. This was something we went through quite a bit in Highland Park as we deliberated about the various policy considerations. And in cases where you have some resistance, the easier method sometimes to get to the end result is that education step. It's allowing the community to at least take the step forward and to start promoting whatever sustainability initiative it is that you're focused on. Legislation is very finite. It is cut and very specifically tailored to what it is that you're ultimately looking to achieve. And good legislation typically has an enforcement component to it. So with that in mind, I think what's important to understand is as you're trying to lead your organization, your communities through this change, which oftentimes requires a lot of educating, not only the elected officials and staff, but the residents themselves, that takes time. And so sometimes the education process will really foster a lot of buy-in, and you can revisit the legislative question down the road once you see a lot more uptake in it. There are times where legislation does make sense. So in Highland Park, we had a coal tar sealant ban, and Rolling Meadows just similarly approved the same ban. And in that case, it's both a measure and a balancing test of now you have a health, life, safety issue, but it's also a sustainability issue because it's protecting the waterways and the natural environment in our community. And so in that case, you kind of can take the balancing equation of, is education enough or do we have to legislate? Is this something that by legislating and putting in place a ban that we can take that finite step to enforce and make sure that that product is not being used in our community? And that's a case-by-case analysis. There are a variety of different resources, and Beth, I know we're in a panel discussion here, so I'll keep my time short, and I can touch on those later as the Q&A session arises. But there are a variety of resources out there: the Greenest Region Compact, Soul Smart, many of which I'm sure the group has heard about before. But those are great resources that I highly encourage you to bring to your organizations to use as the framework and way that you will formulate the different sustainability plans that you're looking to do. And so with that, again, I'm happy to be here and answer any questions. I don't want to take up too much time as I know we're on the panel. So thank you so much, and I appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you, Rob. That was great. I took some notes myself. Just want to remind everyone that we're going to hear from all the panelists first, and then we're going to open it up to questions. So you can put your questions in the chat anytime you want, but please add the name of the person that you would like to address your question to first. So say, Rob, I want to ask you about this, or Rob, what about that? Okay. So the next person, that was really awesome, Rob. As far as the community-based environmental groups, the education piece is something that we really can do very, very well. And so that's, that really points to a way that we can really help our communities out. They really don't want to pass laws that people aren't going to understand and support. So that's where this partnership can be really, really powerful. With that, we'd love to hear from Martha Dooley next. Martha, if you could introduce yourself and tell us how you've been moving ahead with sustainability in your community. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So I'm Martha Dooley. I'm the landscape and sustainability planner for the village of Schaumburg. I've been with the village for 26 years. I was originally hired as a landscape planner for the village, and my job began to change back in the early 2000s when the mayor asked me to start attending sustainability related type of issue meetings with the down at CMAP. So back in 2004, the mayor asked us to write our own biodiversity recovery plan, similar to what Chicago Wilderness had recently published. And so we hired a consultant to do that. And at the same time, we went through all of our zoning code as well as our land development ordinance and updated all of our codes to reflect the directives that were in that plan. So we really began doing a lot of work as far as land use goes back in the early 2000s. Then in 2009, the village wrote its first sustainability plan, I guess I would call it. We call it the Comprehensive Green Action Plan. And we used that plan to implement a bunch of projects through the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. Then subsequent to that, in 2018, the village undertook the writing of a new comprehensive plan or update to our plan. And I was very pleased to see that the village wanted me to work with the consultants to weave sustainability throughout that plan. And so in every chapter of that plan, you'll see directives that are related to to sustainability in one way or another, whether it's land use, emergency operations, park facilities, things like that, energy use, it's all in there, which was fabulous. And right now we're in the process of undertaking a rewrite of our comprehensive green action plan using the framework of the Greenest Region Compact to establish an inventory of all our existing programs and policies and so on. I'm the staff liaison for the village's green team, which is made up of 14 different staff members from all village departments who are providing information to inform that inventory so that I can write the plan. I should take a step back maybe and explain what my position is. So I'm first and foremost, I'm a municipal planner for the village. So I take development proposals through the approval process. I also write zoning code amendments and things like that. I coordinate the sustainability programs for the village, and I coordinate our farmers market, which is a 22-week event with 38 vendors at it. So I stay pretty busy, and the green stuff is kind of, I do it as I can fit it in, but it's so interesting to me that I try to carve out a pretty big portion of my time to spend on it. There are a couple of opportunities for people to get in touch with the village regarding their interests or things that they'd like to see the village doing. The first step can always be me. I'm always here to answer questions from any group or person who's interested in a sustainability type issue. That's what I use the green team for. We can present new ideas to the green team, and I can find out if other departments are already addressing the issue. And then if not, is it an appropriate thing for Schaumburg? Is it, where do we begin? So I can do it on the staff level that way. We also have our environmental committee, which is made up of 7 residents of Schaumburg. They don't have to be educated in the environment at all. They just have to have a passion for the environment. And so I take our more formalized initiatives through the environmental committee and then up through the village board for final approval of different projects and things like that. So there's lots of opportunity to contact staff here at the village and also to contact appointed officials through the environmental committee. So I think that's really short but kind of sweet, and I'll defer to the next speaker, Beth.
Okay, thank you so much. I know I will be asking Martha about the village-wide green team. These are all village employees, and she will tell us how many different departments report on that park committee. It's really impressive. Okay, with that though, we're going to go to Barney Gallagher. He is the head of their sustainability task force. So this will be a great way for you to compare what they're doing in Glencoe with what might be happening or not happening in your community. So Barney, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you much. First, I spent 35 years in corporate life and retired, and was looking for a way to contribute back to the community. And I volunteered for the Sustainability Task Force, and ultimately became a full member of the task force and then chair. The STF is an unusual kind of organization because it has both the community action piece and also the policy advising piece. I know a lot of the environmental committees and that kind of things that are set up by village government, and the STF is part of the Glencoe village government. We are approved by the board of trustees for membership, et cetera, and we have a budget through the village. We were charged with both an advisory role to the board and then an action role in raising awareness of sustainability and educate the public in how we can better live sustainably and as a community grow into a more sustainable model. The benefit of that model, that is being part of the government, is that we do have access to the board of trustees. And so we have the opportunity to, if we feel we have an issue we want to bring, we can bring it directly to the board. There's no other body we have to go through. The drawback is that we have Open Meeting Compliance Act issues. We have to make sure that when we have sub-teams or group meetings, we don't have too many members present, so that we can have an open dialogue without running afoul of the Open Meetings Act. What we have done, we have 14 members appointed by the board. we have encouraged a lot of volunteers. We have currently about 14 or 15 volunteers who are not voting members of the board of the the Sustainability Task Force, but they come to all our meetings, take full part in all of our teams and in all of our activities and our deliberations, but they are not voting members. I think to the extent that we've had success in moving the needle for Glencoe and for our community, is that 2 years ago, we divided into teams. We divided into 5 issue-based teams and then 1 public awareness-focused teams. And what we did, we challenged each of the teams to come up with an 18 to 24-month plan of their own, focused on their issues, and then subsequent to adoption of the plan to implement it. And so they are focused on their areas, and that's what we focus our meetings on. Our monthly meetings are on how we're moving the needle on those various fronts. As I said, it has been, for the most part, an 18 to 24-month focus for the teams, but we are now moving into the comprehensive plan process. Glencoe last did a comprehensive plan some 27 years ago. Sustainability was certainly not on the radar 27 years ago. But we've just hired a consultant who's going to work with the Village Plan Commission, and the Plan Commission will lead the task, but the Sustainability Task Force has been given a position on that process to address sustainability issues. We also have a Council for Inclusion, and that group is also going to play a major role in the planning process. So we'll see how this works out, but the focus from our standpoint is going to be to develop a net zero plan for the village and a full comprehensive sustainability environmental plan for the village for the next 20 years as a part of that process. That may end up being a separate exercise as we get into the planning process. We're not sure. We're just getting started. We had our first organizational meeting last month, so it's very, very much at the beginning of it. Some of the challenges we faced, I think, and I don't know if that's unique, I doubt that it's unique to Glencoe, but as part of the village government, we have the opportunity to get in front of the board, et cetera, and we can we're effective that way. But we also have the village, the park district is a significant piece of the puzzle here when you talk about sustainability in the village. So having to, actually, move beyond just being a part of the village, developing alliances with the park district, with the school district, and with the library people, and then also community organizations like the Friends of the Green Bay Trail are very important to our being able to develop a message and getting it out to the general public. Just from the standpoint of how like I mentioned the team, we have a carbon reduction team, a green lawns team, a water tree ravine team, a sustainable business team, and then a waste and recycling team. So they focus on those specific areas. I would say in terms of working on the policy side, I think our primary success has been working with the village to develop a plan for gas-powered leaf blower regulation and eventual phase out. We did our homework on that. Our green team spent about 6 months researching various other city ordinances, what they've been doing, and coming up with a comprehensive proposal to the village board of trustees. It was so well received that our board instructed our village manager to contact the other villages in the area. And we now have I think it's a 12 village consortium that is working to develop and promulgate a kind of a model phase out plan for gas powered leaf blowers for all these communities. And in that process, they've engaged some representatives from the lawn care businesses so that they can have a piece of that as well. But I think the key to it being a consultative body to the board of trustees is really the homework that you do. The more that you have done your homework and come up with a real concrete and actionable proposal, the more reception we get, better reception we get from the board of trustees. So in terms of public awareness, that's probably the biggest challenge I think we face. How do you get the message out? How do you actually influence people's mindsets you can actually, how do you get them to think about leaving the leaves or doing a no-mow May type of exercise. We have been very, very active with our library, doing Zoom meetings for educational purposes. We've got our village blog, the village. We did a survey in the community. We had, village is 8,000 people. We had about 500 respondents on our survey. And we found that actually our village, e-news and the blogs that we have from the village are really the best way to reach our public in the village. We also do social media, we do signage, et cetera. And then we even have been doing direct mailers for certain programs. But that's really the big challenge, is how do you get the message out, get people to listen and modify behavior. We're doing a process right now where we decided we're asking the village to develop their carbon footprint as a basis for doing our planning. So we decided we had everybody on the task force do their own carbon footprint. We're going to publish that. We're going to ask the Board of Trustees for those as individuals to do their carbon footprint and publish their carbon footprint. So lead by example. So those are kind of some of the things we're into. Again, I'd be looking forward to answering any questions that you have about what we're doing or how we're doing it and where we're going. And I thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Barney. Could you just tell us what the 5 issue teams started with carbon reduction, ended with waste reduction? What were the 3 in between?
Carbon reduction, green lawns, which is where the gas-powered leaf blower ban discussion came up, also our Leave the Leaf program. And we have some initiatives around herbicide and fertilizer reduction. Then the wastewater, and see, we have a team on water, trees, and ravines. Glencoe is blessed with a lovely network of ravines that we use for our stormwater runoff. It's all privately owned, but we utilize it publicly. How do we maintain those, and how do we develop really a public-private consortium or cooperation in maintaining that resource? Then we have the sustainable businesses. We're looking at how can we support our businesses to incorporate sustainability into their practices. We are in the midst of conducting a survey of our businesses to determine what they are and aren't doing and how we can help them out. And then the waste recycle, it's reduction, recycle, and of waste that we have, we focused on. We have a donate recycle day. We focus on composting. We've incorporated TerraCycle for fabric recycling. And then just, like I said, the public awareness, which takes a lot of, cuts across all the functions, all the disciplines.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Barney. We'll be back to you for questions. There is an expression, green with envy. I'm sure some of you are very envious of having a village manager like Rob Sabo. I'm sure some of you are very envious that Schaumburg has an incredible person like Martha Dooley that's been doing this for 27 years, I think. And Barney Gallagher, the description that you have in a community of 8,000 people, the fact that you've got 14 members on your sustainability task force, plus 14 active volunteers is enviable. So kudos to all 3 of you. And we're all going to be very envious of Skokie, because they have James Johnson as a new elected official who is really shaking things up in Skokie in a good way. So James, if you could give us an idea of what's going on in Skokie and how you're contributing to it as an elected official.
Sure. I hope I'm doing things in a good way. My name's James. I'm a village trustee in Skokie. I've only been on our village board for less than a year and a half, but I ran a very sustainability kind of first policy campaign. And since I've been a trustee, I've been working to help promote our new sustainability plan and really challenge a lot of our economic development that is still kind of pretty outdated in perspective and doesn't really align with some of the sustainability goals we've been making as a community. When I was thinking about like the 2 things I really wanted to share about kind of a view from the inside on how to effectively advocate for sustainability in our local governments. Kind of ironically, the first thing I thought of was that outside pressure is still very, very much needed. I feel like I have an even greater appreciation for it now that I'm a little more on the inside. The push for sustainability has to come from the inside, and it also has to come from the outside. It's wonderful to have elected officials that are sustainability minded. It's wonderful to have commissions and task forces and green teams. That outside pressure still needs to be there. Here in Skokie, in the past 2 years or so, I really think that one of our greatest successes is having our kind of local Go Green Skokie group become a lot more intentionally politically active and showing up at village board meetings and writing letters and having one-on-one conversations with elected officials. Before 2021, I'm not sure we even really had kind of a grassroots citizens group pushing sustainability at a kind of a local government level. There's also so much value in just running for office. I'm a huge believer that in this day and age, we should not allow any ballot anywhere for any election to not have sustainability minded candidates on it. Running for office is incredibly valuable, even if you don't win. Contested elections are really critical to engaging communities on issues like sustainability and kind of adding pressure on all candidates to prioritize sustainability more than they would otherwise. And so that's kind of one thing I want to say. The second big thing is that I think, as kind of probably everyone in this group already knows, I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but sustainability isn't something that you can just kind of add on to your local government. It's something that really has to be infused into everything that we do. And so I wanted to encourage everyone to kind of think also kind of beyond sustainability commissions and task force and green teams. Here in Skokie, for example, we have a sustainability commission within our system of boards and commissions. And they are meant to be a policy advisory group on sustainability, but often they're very limited in what they're allowed to do. Or sometimes when they do advocate, their suggestions are sometimes disregarded or siloed. Something I'm learning more and more of is we have to kind of infuse sustainability into all of our other commissions, all of our other task forces. We have a plan commission, like I'm sure most of your communities, that deals with land use decisions, that deals with zoning, really important zoning decisions that have huge environmental consequences. And often those decisions are made with very little kind of sustainability conversation. We have an economic development commission that also could really use some more sustainability minded folks on it. So I think thinking creatively about how to infuse sustainability into all those other aspects of local government is also really important. Beth had mentioned kind of this big case study in Skokie with this Carvana tower that I'm sure some of you have heard of because it made kind of regional news. Early this year, Carvana proposed to build this kind of 14-story giant glass tower of used cars right next to a forest preserve. And it kind of drew the anger of so many environmentalists in the region. And kind of sadly, I ended up being the only person on my council to vote against it, even though we had so much opposition to it. But in the aftermath of that, we had so many people in the community asking us to really revamp our sustainability commission and give them more of a role in the kind of in land use and zoning decisions. And although I definitely agree, that experience made me realize the extent to which we also need to transform the many aspects of our local government that already have a big role in these decisions. The Carvana development wouldn't have happened in Skokie without support from our community development department and our economic development commission and our plan commission and all of these other components of our local government that that certainly need to prioritize sustainability more than they already have. So yeah, I think the big thing I want to say is just that I think our times call for really thinking creatively and thinking broadly and thinking systemically. Yeah, and I'll be here for questions too. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, James. I really loved what you said, and that is it's really important to run for public office and not have any races that don't have multiple candidates running. Kim Stone, I'm not going to turn things over to Kim Stone because she made that decision too several election cycles ago. So Kim is going to make a few comments about her experience in Highland Park, and then she is going to help moderate our questions. So far, we don't have questions in the chat. Kim and I are really good at coming up with questions, so we'll be asking questions, but if you have something specific, please make sure you put it in the chat so we can get it answered. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Kim.
Okay, thanks, Beth. I'm not going to say a whole lot because I don't want to duplicate what's already been said. And most people in this group have already heard from me and don't need to hear more. But I ran for office for city council in 2013. I'm now in my third term on the city council here in Highland Park. And the reason that I ran was for climate change, basically. I had been working on climate change now since 1988 professionally. And I thought maybe if I were on the local city council, I would be able to make more of a difference on moving things at this level and that would make a bigger impact. And I've also been involved in the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus Environmental Committee, which is how I met Martha. And that is a good way of sort of disseminating and sharing information at the local government level, similar to what Go Green does at the local citizen level. So what else can I say? Just little things that we work on that I think are very useful. We have a sustainable vehicles policy here in Highland Park. So when we purchase a car, we don't just look at the upfront cost or any other sort of vehicle. We actually look at the lifetime cost. So that helps us to purchase hybrid and electric vehicles for our fleet as well. When we just look at the upfront cost, it's always cheaper to buy an internal combustion engine. So looking at the fuel cost and the maintenance cost helps to make it an easy decision. So we're beginning to transition our police fleet now to hybrids, which is a big deal. That took a lot to make that happen, but that's happening. We also, one of my first city council meetings, there was a proposal to put an air conditioning unit, a new air conditioning unit on a city building. And it was the least efficient unit you could buy in the United States because that was the cheapest one. But if you look at, again, the lifetime cost of operating that unit, the electricity cost and everything included, it was not the cheapest. And I contacted my colleagues on the city council, my then very new colleagues, and said, we can't approve this. So I was able to stop that from happening and to include efficiency language in future requests for proposals for equipment for our city buildings. So, not rocket science, but these are things that are not necessarily being done in all of our communities and should be. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. Just there are a few questions now in the chat from Marion. But I want to start with one other question before we get to Marion. James had mentioned a bit about the structure and where sustainability goes. And I ran into this issue recently at a meeting of the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, which is our regional planning agency. They have a climate change committee, which is great. But then they also have a committee that's looking at expansion of new roads, expansion and building of new roads, expansion of existing ones. Sorry if my brain is not completely able to talk today. Those two things are incompatible with each other. They're not taking climate change into consideration when they're looking at all of these roadway expansions because they're not looking at the carbon footprint and the impact of building new roads. And there's got to be a better way to look at this. Colorado is a very good example where they're looking at induced demand. When you expand a road, more people drive. It doesn't reduce traffic because more people come out to drive because they think the road is bigger and they can then use their car more. So there are other things that need to happen in order to actually reduce traffic, and road building is not one of them. But in city government, and it's similar where there's a disconnect sometimes. There's a sustainability committee, there's a sustainability person, but those things are not necessarily taken into consideration within the Public Works Department or the other departments that handle these things. So I'd be curious to hear from James and also from Martha, from sort of the staff and the elected official perspective, as to, how do you structure sustainability? It's been different in each place.
And then Kim, as an offshoot to your question, we can hear from James first on that, but then Martha, as a follow-up to Kim's question to you, is someone would like to know more, Iris from Brookfield, more about exactly what your green team is about, how it operates, and how do people get selected for it? So James, why don't you start answering Kim's question, and then we'll hear from Martha, okay? That question came in while Kim was speaking.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Kim?
Yeah, the question of just how best to structure sustainability so that it is incorporated into all of the operations. Do you want a separate sustainability person or department? Do you incorporate it into the city manager's office? What's the best?
So here in Skokie, we don't have a sustainability coordinator or anything like a green team. We have a sustainability commission that has been encouraging us to hire a sustainability coordinator for the village. And our village staff has really been pushing back on that and saying that that would be the antithesis of our philosophy of incorporating sustainability into every department. It's almost this mentality of if we have one person, then it's their responsibility, whereas it should be everyone's responsibility. But ironically, because we don't necessarily have that structure, it's not everyone's responsibility currently. I would love to see us hire a sustainability coordinator and kind of be a kind of a lead at doing that infusion work. I really like the idea of a green team. I mean, we have and our village has an equity team where we bring people together from multiple departments to talk about how we can infuse equity into aspects of village operations. But we don't necessarily have anything like that. Actually, I would love to hear from Martha too about this green team and how it's going.
So I'm just going to jump in right in, because James, I think you could take your equity team and have it be your green team, because equity and diversity and inclusion is all part of sustainability. And so you've got it already there. All you have to do is maybe rebrand it and you're ready to go. So let me talk about our green team a little bit. The members, so the green team is formed based on a directive from the village manager's office to form a team of staff members that would be dedicated to providing information about what they do with regard to our framework for our new sustainability plan. Schaumburg is a very big community, about 75,000 residents. Our population goes up to 150,000 during the workday, and we generate the third highest tax revenue, sales tax revenue in the state. And so it's a big village. There are 11 different departments in the village that are represented on the green team. I'm going to go through the list real quick. Community development, engineering and public works, economic development, finance, the village manager's office, our IT department, our communications department, our cultural arts department, police, fire, our human resources department. So everybody, and everybody's information is really important. Police and fire, they also house our senior services division. And so they're vital to the sustainability of the community. How do they help out that population? Our HR department is heavily involved in our newer diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. And one of the things that just came out of a green team meeting was their request to have a laptop at every village counter that would do translation services for the people that come to the counters looking for building permits or just asking for how do I pay my water bill, things like that. So the formation of the green team was based on a need to have some sort of coordination of all of this. and to have a person that the village manager can go to, like he can say, Martha, what are we doing about this? And I'll contact police, fire, engineering, and public works. I can contact the staff representative from each department. And the staff representatives were chosen by the department head. So based on their staff capacity and knowing what divisions within their department would have more input, they chose their representative for the team. Okay, so we left it up to them to decide who would best represent their, their efforts as far as our sustainability plan would go. And I have to say, it's a great process. We, like Kim, we are also in the process of creating a fleet transition plan and looking to transition our plan over to electric vehicles as they become available. Right now, there's no pursuit rated police car that's available that's an electric vehicle. So in the interim, we're going to go to some hybrids, but our eventual goal is to go to electric. And so we're going to be doing, looking at this transition plan where we would look at not only the vehicles in the future, but all the infrastructure needs and power generation and all that we need to power these EV charging stations, all that, make sure we just do a comprehensive plan for the transition of that. So now as part of the green team, I've been asked to sit in on these fleet transition meetings so that I'm informed as questions come from the village manager to me about those. Does that help?
I think that's great. That's a really good structure and something that we all should be implementing. And you probably will hear from people in some of our other municipalities now about how to put in place such a structure. One question that I think is related to that, are municipal managers educated on sustainability? The people on the green teams, do they have any sort of sustainability education or experience?
Well, they don't necessarily have like a sustainability degree, but like the person that manages our garbage contract is one of our representatives on the green team. So she does all the waste and recycling for the village. Now, I wouldn't say she has a sustainability degree, but because she works with all of that, she's very knowledgeable about what, when we're negotiating our 5-year contracts, what options can we ask for? She'll say, hey, Martha, I read about this one option. What do you think? So I wouldn't say that they necessarily have sustainability degrees or anything like that. Similarly, I don't either. I have a degree in horticulture from U of I. But sustainability is woven into the culture of Schaumburg. And so if you're not on it, you better get on the boat because it's just the way it is.
Good to hear. So I know that sustainability is not integrated into the culture everywhere. And that's right. One of the other questions that I'm going to ask Rob, since you've been on both sides now. There are people who resist implementing sustainability measures. Have you developed any successful methods of persuasion?
So typically when you get into the scenario where you have differing opinions, the most important component in my experience to getting that buy-in is oftentimes not every single environmental initiative has a cost benefit that is a cost on the dollar side, but there's an environmental benefit. So working one-on-one, if there's a specific elected official that may have some apprehensions or may not necessarily be as in tune or necessarily like the concept that's proposed, I think spending a little bit of extra time sharing some of the benefits of what it is that's proposed with that individual. Again, a lot of individuals who are on a council board are bringing their own life experiences, and not everyone has had the lived experience of sustainability, but spending the time to educate those individuals, I think will help them maybe not necessarily always get you to 100% buy-in, but at least get you part of the way. I think sometimes you got to be happy with incremental movement, not necessarily 100% movements. And that goes, again, back to what I was talking a little bit about before about the education versus legislation. In times where we ran into walls in the past with the legislative approach, we pivoted and said, okay, rather than the legislative concept, can we at least focus some resources and do education? And at that point, it's hard to say no, because the cost of education isn't really as high as maybe a program or policy initiative might be to implement outright. So, I think it just takes time, investing time with an entire council or with with aldermen and board members, trustees, to help them and at least demonstrate, what is the environmental benefit? Why is this an important matter? What will this do for our community? What will other communities look to our community and think? I think the optics is an important component of this as well. And in instances where there's the cost benefit, Councilmember Stone talked about the environmentally friendly vehicles. So in times where there's a cost benefit, that tends to be a huge selling point. So we just actually, right before this meeting, I was having a capital budget meeting with our staff and talked about, our inspector vehicles should be electric vehicles. They're burning tons of mileage. Municipalities don't pay for their electricity that comes from their public works and city hall facilities. So in and of itself, while you're paying a little bit more to buy that electric vehicle, you don't pay the gas. So those are things that I think, as you propose those kind of concepts, really make sense in ways that people who have that lived experience can understand. So that's been at least a way that I've approached it, and it's been successful.
Thanks.
Can I just piggyback on this little incremental change? This is so important, you guys, because then it may take you start an initiative like we did our code changes back in 2004. And at the time, we wanted to put allow rain gardens, and everyone was like, I don't want weed patches in front of, single family homes. So we didn't get it in that first zoning code change, but we got it a year or two later. I mean, you get it, so all they have to see is a demonstration garden somewhere or something to, and you can use that as an education to change their minds about things. So the incremental changes, Rob, they're so important, and they really move the needle forward, in like a 5 or 7 year period. So just be patient, you'll get them.
It's interesting from a historical perspective for those of us who are working with new groups in towns that have not done much in this area, to think that in 2004, Schaumburg was doing a biodiversity recovery plan. That is really impressive. So if you're in a community where your elected officials don't feel like they're very interested in this is a good reminder that they're behind the times. This is absolutely the trend of the future, and we can do whatever we can to catch up. The questions are fantastic. They keep coming. We're definitely not going to have time for all of them. Kim, what question do you want to take? And apologies to all of you whose questions we're not going to have time for.
I was going to here's to Sherry's question about the business community. Barney had mentioned an ongoing survey. I don't know if any of the other communities have done something like that. Were chambers of commerce cooperative? Are there discernible changes in business practices that you can share? Maybe Barney, you want to start this? And
first, our chamber is very, very cooperative. We used to have a Glencoe chamber. Now we have Winnetka, Glencoe, Northfield, Northfield are all under one umbrella of chamber. And the head of that organization is very, very interested in sustainability issues. So she's been very helpful in helping us reach out to and supporting our effort, reaching out to the business community. As I say, we're just in the process of developing the questionnaire right now. I've got a first draft of it sitting on my desk right here. We hope to have it. We're going to meet with the chamber representative probably next week and go over what we have, and then talk about how we're actually going to administer it. I haven't got any results yet, but we did talk to when we ran our community survey back in March. To get people interested in answering the survey, we decided to put together a packet of coupons or giveaway stuff from our local merchants. So we went to all of our merchants in the community as the task force and asked them if they would contribute something to our, to encourage participation. We ended up with 4 different baskets worth goods of $450 or more in each basket of stuff contributed by the merchants to support our survey on sustainability. So I think there's at least in Glencoe, there's a lot of interest in the business community to think about how to support sustainability. What we're going to try, one of the things we're thinking about trying to do is are there ways where we can help them put together some kind of purchasing consortium for certain things like compostable plates and stuff for the restaurants, for carry out, that kind of thing. How can we facilitate cooperation between the businesses?
that's great. And as Beth mentioned before, it's just amazing that you have 14 people on your commission and then another 14 who volunteer separately. We have 7 on most of our commissions, and we are more than twice your size. So it's like actually more than 3 times your size. I want to ask another question. How do panelists suggest working with the village staff that's actively working against sustainability initiatives or shutting down programs? So the incremental change is one thing, but if you've got people who are actually hostile, I don't know if James, if you want to take a stab since you've dealt with this a little bit.
I think you kind of hit it on looking at the lifetime cost of some of the things we're doing. I think that can be often really effective. I find that sometimes the staff and electeds that are most opposed to sustainability measures come from a purely financial budgetary expense perspective. Something I was thinking about is, here in Skokie, to use an example, we're one of the very few communities in Illinois that does a twice weekly garbage pickup. Very rare. It's incredibly wasteful and very inefficient and very environmentally wasteful. But if we got rid of it, we'd save roughly $600,000 a year. We've been dragging our feet for years on shifting all of our streetlights to LED bulbs. We've been saying we were going to do this for 5 or 6 years and are just starting now, even though that shift, although there's kind of upfront costs, saves the village roughly $50,000 a year. I think if you can kind of get little things like that, I think that helps shift the perspective. Looking at vehicles, as you mentioned, like the upfront costs of a hybrid vehicle might be more expensive, but if you look at the long-term costs in terms of maintenance and fuel, recently we contemplated whether we should buy a electric garbage truck, and the upfront cost was very expensive, but yet the savings in diesel and the fuel cost of diesel are tens of thousands of dollars a year. So that is one way that I have found to be fairly effective, is really looking at the lifetime costs and really just asking people to think about the long-term future. I think so often, maybe just because we're often in these kind of crises modes of COVID and economic crisis because of COVID, we're often like very short-term focused and just kind of encouraging that longer term thinking. We can't just be planning for Skokie, I can't just be planning for Skokie in 2025. I'm thinking about what's Skokie gonna be like in 2050, what's Skokie gonna be like in 2075. And encouraging that kind of longer term thinking, I find to be somewhat effective.
I was thinking how some of this is kind of age related, and what I just had said at a village meeting, that all of our communities, quite frankly, are competing with each other for young new families to move into our communities. And I think it's pretty clear that younger people are really expecting that their communities are going to be addressing sustainability issues responsibly. And so that can be a big incentive for older elected officials to realize that the younger people moving in are going to be expecting them to do the right thing. Kim.
And I've used that argument, for example, for some of the bike and pedestrian friendly things that we've done here in Highland Park, where people are used to being able to bike places and walk places, and that's something that helps make Highland Park attractive. So using that argument rather than the argument of people have to get out of their cars sometimes is more effective. The other thing that I think is effective and is something I've been trying to do is to recruit younger people to run for office, because they do tend to have more interest in sustainability issues. I wanted to ask just a little bit more, James. I know there was you had quite the issue with the ballot initiatives recently, where there were forces that wanted to put some sustainability issues onto the ballot as referenda, and it was able to be pulled at the last minute thanks to your organizing and people coming out. But you said that there were some interesting discussions that had taken place since that happened, and I wondered if you would be able to share any of that.
Sure. We went through kind of I would call a minor political crisis recently here in Skokie, where our kind of mayor and village attorney tried to put some sustainability referendum on our November ballot, but it was actually kind of a pretty transparent attempt to block some citizen referendum on electoral reform from getting on our ballot. Greenwashing is, I'm sure, a term that so many people are familiar with, but is something to be mindful of. Sometimes it's easy for, and I think lots of local governments like to kind of pat themselves on the back for sustainability measures that may not be as kind of deep or rooted as we'd like them to be. It certainly raised a lot of conversations about the value of putting sustainability measures on the ballot. One of the questions that they had proposed was, should the village of Skokie ban gas-powered leaf blowers? And the response from lots of members of the community was, of course, we don't need a referendum advisory question, just do it. One of the questions was going to be, should the village get rid of its second weekly garbage pickup? And the response from sustainability-minded folks in the community was, absolutely, don't put that question on the ballot. But also kind of a fear of, what happens if you put a question like that on the ballot and then it fails? What happens if you put a question on the ballot about gas-powered leaf blowers and it doesn't pass or something like that? It was a kind of a really interesting, it became a very interesting kind of surprise community conversation about the value of putting sustainability questions on the ballot via referendum.
And given the number of people that actually vote and the demographics of those folks, it doesn't necessarily give you the best picture.
Yeah. Sometimes local governments look for a little kind of political cover in doing maybe things that might be a political risk, so to speak. There are a lot of people in Skokie that take a lot of pride in our second weekly garbage pickup, and we think that's one of the great things about our municipal services, even if it's super wasteful and super inefficient.
In San Francisco, they've got now every other week, and their garbage cans are half the size. There's like a floor in those carts so that they're much smaller.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of something we went through recently. I'll put some links about it in the chat just in case anyone's interested.
Thank you. Next question is for Rob. What forms of education do you think have been most effective? People attending meetings, tours of projects, test driving electric vehicles, other things?
Yeah, I would say there's a wide variety of ways to do it. So an example, in Highland Park, we were heavily focused on implementing compost at special events. And actually our Go Green Highland Park, I think I saw Jenny Futterman's name in the group, was out at some of our events. We have a food truck event that, questions on running food trucks, we'll talk about that different. But right now, as far as the compost, the event had compost containers, recycling containers, and trash containers. And people would walk up to them and go, I don't know what to do with this, and just toss all of their trash into the compost or all of their compost into the trash. It was just, people just didn't know how to sort. And so we had, through the partnership with Go Green Highland Park, had members of that group come out and help people sort all of their trash into the right containers. Lakeshore Recycling was our hauler in Highland Park at the time. They had given us some resources with signage. And so our perspective was, our goal was to go to where the people are. So rather than expecting people to go onto our website in that initiative or try to read something that we publicized, we were actually going out there and meeting people out in the world, in the environment that people are interacting and doing things in, and helping them understand what is compostable, what isn't. And that in turn hopefully turned into conversations about, not only can you compost here, but we have a ride-along program. You can compost your organics at home, and slowly but surely we've been seeing, Highland Park has been seeing that uptake in compost. So long story short, I think oftentimes as you evaluate how do you educate the community, it isn't as easy as just saying, let's just put one social media post out there and everyone's going to see it, because, as we know with social media, the way that the algorithms work, that message won't get out to as many people necessarily. I think there's different types of modalities that exist, whether it's using the cities or villages, newsletters, making comments at council or public meetings and really getting it out there to the audience, going out and being at special events. So I know Go Green is probably active in all sorts of different community events. So getting out in front of residents and talking about what are some of the initiatives that the organization's focused on are the ways to get out there. And you oftentimes have a captive audience. So you don't have someone who's kind of meandering through. You have an opportunity to have a conversation with people and talk about what are some of the things that you're trying to achieve and answer questions. I think people sometimes have questions, they just don't know where to go to ask them. So those events and being out there, really making an extra effort to get out is probably the best way, at least I've seen, to really advance education, these initiatives.
And I think the other part, the question was from Susan Casey. I think part of her question was regarding the staff, probably educating the staff as well as the residents. And I think what's useful is, as you said, like the test drives of the electric vehicles, talking to other municipal staff that have done things is always really useful. If I tell them what to do, if I tell them what I've done or what I've heard about or anything from research that I've completed, that's not nearly as useful as talking to their peers. So finding other municipalities that have good models is always a good idea. I want to ask one final question, which is from Liz, which is, are there successful ordinances in your communities that you could share with us or point us to that have to do with sustainability? Barney, do you want to start? Go reverse order. You're muted.
We're in the process of working on ordinances, but we don't have anything that I can point to. The one like the gas-powered leaf blower is in process. We're also working with village staff right now on a new tree ordinance, looking at how to preserve heritage trees in particular, and also developing a replanting program, some kind of, I know some villages, they have community members can piggyback on village purchases of trees and get it at a discount. We're looking at how we can maybe do something like that, but I really haven't got any other specifics.
Who wants to go next?
I think that, the beauty of municipal work is that a lot of the work, all of our documents are public. And so, working in this field, you can always reach out to communities and municipalities and get in touch with someone in the manager's office and ask about what sustainability related ordinances may exist in those communities. Similar to Glencoe, we in Rolling Meadows right now are working on a tree preservation ordinance in light of someone who came and clear cut a bunch of trees through the planned development and then did nothing with it. Now it's just a vacant open parcel. So, that was, don't let a mistake go to waste type of scenario. And we grabbed that and ran with it for a TPO, tree preservation ordinance. So I think just reaching out to your community, you don't have to hesitate. You can reach out to any community. It doesn't mean, just because you live in one community doesn't mean you can reach out to any municipality in the area and request information. We're all here to help, no matter whether you're a resident in our community or not.
And while Lake Forest was the first of the tree preservation ordinances in our area and maybe anywhere, Glenview actually has a really solid.
Yeah, Glenview's got a good one.
Yeah.
And Winnetka does as well.
James. Anything in Skokie that we should be looking at and copying?
Not to be overly cynical about my own village government, but nothing really immediately jumped out to me as like, this is something that other communities should definitely do that we are doing. We are doing a number of things really well, I think, but I'm not sure if there's something, I'm not sure if there's really anything in sustainability that we're doing that could truly serve as a model for other communities. It doesn't mean we're not doing good work in many regards, but yeah.
So this is an example where we can all share from each other's communities. As Rob says, it's all online, but if there's no village person in your government whose job it is to find that information, if you don't have a sustainability coordinator, there may be no one looking for it. So that's where, if you've got a citizens group, you can maybe start that process Wilmette just finished a 3-year process of working on our tree ordinance. We had the Chicago Region Trees Initiative and the Morton Arboretum working closely with us. It's really good. It wasn't everything we wanted, but if any communities are interested in a new, better tree policy, by all means, start with the best policies and ordinances you can find from other communities. It's much easier to get your village to start thinking about it if their peers have been doing good work in other communities. I also want to mention sidewalk policies, which have not come up. Kim Stone did a great job in changing the sidewalk policy in Highland Park. Ann Nagel, who was on, did an amazing job in Wilmette. One suggestion that I have is try to change your port ordinance before there's a controversial issue. We quietly changed our sidewalk policy that is going to make Wilmette a much better place to walk and bike, and Kim Stone did the same thing in her community.
So if I might mention a few codes that the Village of Schaumburg has, that we've had for many, many, many decades, a landscape and tree preservation codes. We also, in 2009, developed a renewable energy code that has solar, wind, and geothermal in it. We also have an electric vehicle infrastructure parking code in our parking code section. And we did an amendment to our building code that requires the installation of the infrastructure to run EV charging in any new garage or any new single family home. And we're also strongly encouraging any new multifamily development to include that if there are garages, inside the building. That would be part of the building code. So those are some that we have.
Thank you. Schaumburg is a really great place to look for ideas. I want to just put Tessa on the spot from Northbrook, because you had mentioned several different things in the chat. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing there?
Oh, sure. Thank you. In Northbrook, we have a sustainability commission who is charged with overseeing our climate action plan. And I'm the sustainability coordinator who's a staff liaison to that group. I just mentioned in the chat some ideas for ordinances municipalities can potentially look into for advancing their sustainability efforts, such as single-use bag fees. Not only does that reduce the contamination in your landfill in communities because plastic bags cannot be recycled typically, but also it could generate some funds for sustainability funding in your community. I know there are some municipalities who have no idling enforcement ordinances. Complete streets is a great thing to look into as well. And for new developments in Northbrook, something we like to encourage is solar readiness. So that has to do with the rooftop slope and orientation and just different structures, making sure all new developments can be amenable to future solar installations, and same with creating the wiring and conduit for electric vehicles. Those are just like ways to tap into sustainability in terms of new developments that come to town. That's something in Northbrook we like to review all of our new developments in terms of how they are earth friendly and how they could be better to that regard.
Thank you. With that, I think we're going to wrap up. If any of the panelists have something quick they want to add, I'm going to give you a couple minutes right now.
Well, I'll make a quick remark, just as a matter of, managing expectations for how and when you work with the respective governments. From the administration side and employees, we work for the entire city council. So while there may be one elected official who may have a certain policy that they want implemented, we're working towards the majority. So, as you're working on advocacy and reaching out to your elected officials, I would say it's not just one elected official maybe that you want to target, but work with all of them. Because when we bring policies forward or when we're implementing those things, we aren't necessarily implementing them based on one individual elected official, but the entire elected body. And so that's just one thing I wanted to share with everyone for perspective's sake. It's, as a municipal manager, my line of communication, my direct report is the entire city council, the 7 members in Rolling Meadows. So while there may be one, we'll work with the entire council just so that we get to a majority. And I think that's just something important to keep in mind. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you for pointing that out, Rob, because I gotta say, everybody who has any sustainability ideas, questions, or issues in Highland Park calls me. And why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? And I say there are 6 others who you need to talk to. You've got me, so you've got my vote, but you got to convince at least 3 of the others. So don't always call the environmentalist. Call the other people on your village board or city council. So with that, I want to thank all of our panelists. This has been really a great discussion, much different than our usual meetings in format, and I think it worked out well. So thank you all for being here and for sharing all of your expertise. You are welcome to stay. We're going to go to community sharing, where we go and each community group talks a little bit about what they are up to. But if you need to go, we will understand that as well. And I will unpin everybody so that we can see the whole group. And Beth, do you want to add anything, or do you have?
Well, Tessa has just said that the following communities have full-time sustainability staff: Naperville, Elgin, Oak Park, Park Forest, Northbrook, and Evanston. And it sounds like Schaumburg does as well. Go Green Wilmette has been recommending this to Wilmette for the last 16 years, saying that in order to do this work really well, you have to hire someone to do it. It's got to be their job to take the lead and to work with all of these different departments. But as Rob said, everybody wants to know who's going to pay for it.
For those that are looking for someone to help with your sustainability, you might contact Edith Macra at the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus about her Green Corps program, because she does have that program where it's students that want to work in sustainability, and they're at a much reduced cost than a full-time employee would be. And you might be able to work out something through that program, but Edith is a wealth of information for things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And Tessa, were you a graduate of that program?
Yes, so it was run through AmeriCorps volunteers, and I know that they did not have a 2022 cohort. They're hoping to get funding again through AmeriCorps sometime soon, but I would encourage anyone to reach out to Edith, because she is a wealth of knowledge. And if you just put your name in the hat that you're looking to get someone from that team in the future, I would encourage it. But I just wanted to let you know that there's not one for 2022, just in case you're thinking you missed out.
Yeah, we have had several of those Greenest Region Corps members in Highland Park under Rob's able leadership. So hoping that program will come back, because that was really a great thing for communities that were too small to hire people.
Kim, I know that Highland Park has had various different versions. You've hired consultants. I think you've had part-time sustainability people. How else has Highland Park tried to have a staff member who was knowledgeable about these issues?
Well, we have a trash hauler contract. We've got a franchise agreement, and Merlan posted something in the chat which describes a little bit in terms of the benefits of that system. And so we have a franchise fee that we put into a sustainability fund. And through that fund, we've hired a consultant who does certain tasks under the direction of city staff on a part-time basis. We also have had these Greenest Region Corps members who have helped out over the last few years. And then we got super lucky in having Rob as the assistant city manager, and allowing him to work with me quite a bit on sustainability initiatives in Highland Park. And I'm hopeful that his replacement will be interested in doing something similar, because having that role in the city manager's office, even if it's not an official part of the responsibility, is really helpful. I think having it at that level rather than in some of the other departments, or having a green team like Martha has.
I also, thanks, Kim. I want to mention there were a couple issues that people wanted to hear answers to that we just felt were pretty specific, and we're not going to be able to address them. But one was the idea of whether or not individual communities should try to have any restrictions on plastic bags. Seema Keshav brought that up. This is a passion of hers. This is a kind of a hard thing to address on community by community. It'd be fantastic if we had federal, state, or regional laws, but since we don't have that, all of your communities, if you're thinking of doing any kind of bag restrictions, fees, That's something that if there were a few communities that took the lead, others would be more likely to follow. Another issue that's very important in the Lake Forest region and should be important to all of us. Oh, I'm sorry. Is the idea of artificial turf. Sorry. Artificial turf and the fact that we should all be thinking, oh my God, sorry. We should be thinking about whether or not I'm so sorry, it's my 93-year-old mom. Whether we should be allowing artificial turf in our communities. Not only is there a runoff issue, there is a massive waste problem. Artificial turf gets rolled up and thrown out every 7 to 10 years. And it's a much larger problem than many of us think about. I know that Lake Forest is going to want to talk to you, Martha, about, because I know there's quite a bit of marsh. Apparently there's some artificial turf in Schaumburg. So we can't.
That's the park district. That is the
Park
village.
district.
So it wouldn't be me. You'd have to call the park district.
That was our park district choice too. Okay, so with that, I think even though we could keep discussing this all day long, I think we're going to look, okay, Tessa says that Oak Park, Woodstock, and Edwardsville have some sort of bans. Evanston has a plastic bag ban and a paper bag fee, and Chicago also. So a lot more work in plastic pollution has to be done. But for now, I think we're going to do these very short community reports. For better or for worse, we have potentially 31 different communities, which is phenomenal. But it does mean we have about a minute or a minute and a half per community. We're going to go alphabetically, although Winnetka always gets last, so maybe we'll call on Liz earlier. It could be, so keep an eye on the chat. We don't like to spend a lot of time as people fumble around to unmute because we have such a short amount of time. We're going to be going with Arlington Heights, Aurora, Barrington, and Buffalo Grove. If you have something to say, be ready to be called on, okay? Melanie from Arlington Heights, anything you'd like to add about what your group is doing, either challenges or successes? I'll be calling these names very fast. So if you don't get on fast enough, put it in the chat. We'll call on you again. Could we talk to someone from Aurora? Jennifer Lucas, you're on deck with Barrington. Jennifer, anything you'd like to tell us about what's happening in Barrington with Buffalo Grove next? Okay, Deerfield. Lots happening up in Deerfield. Anyone want to sign on? And okay.
It's Buffalo Grove.
Oh, Buffalo Grove, Rosemary.
Everybody's very quiet today.
Okay, Deerfield. If you're Des Plaines, Evanston, Glencoe, or Glenview, just be ready, okay? Catching up time fast. Anyone want to say anything from Des Plaines? Liz Bowman? No, she was on. News from Evanston.
Evanston always has something.
Okay, Glencoe. Well, we've heard a lot from Barney from Glencoe.
I'll just put in one plug for the Friends of the Green Bay Trail, July 30th Trail Day from 8 until noon. It's a great event. Come out and enjoy the trail.
Terrific. Glenview, Sherry.
Yeah, so the 232 All-State campus is being redeveloped, and the developer and the village have pushed it through in a matter of weeks. Unfortunately, there's a provision in the annexation agreement, because it's been in unincorporated Cook County all this time, that limits the applicability of standards for this 10-building industrial warehouse development. It limits standards to what is in place today. And although Glenview adopted the Greenest Region Compact in 2020, we have done nothing to impose any kind of requirements, sustainability requirements. So we have 1 week to actively lobby our Board of Trustees before they give final approval to see if we can get some sustainability features incorporated into the development plans. That's it.
Thank you. That's important work. I know Kim has been involved with that in Highland Park. I mean, especially with groundskeeping. I mean, you may not think about that as a problem, but if this is a big campus, some changes in the land care policies are really important. Thank you for that. Okay, so now we're now with H's, L's, Hoffman Estates. Lisa Vanderbleek, would you like to jump in?
I'm gonna say something since I'm an H.
Okay, Highland Park next.
So I don't have a lot to add for Go Green Highland Park, but I want to say this. We've had a difficult couple of weeks here in Highland Park, or week plus a day. And most of your communities have been unbelievably helpful to us. The police and fire response from everybody was just incredible, and has continued. I mean, there was a police car here from Gary, Indiana over the weekend, and people have come from far, but our nearby neighbors, who are the people on this call, are the ones who came out the quickest. Just for example, Highland Park has 2 ambulances in our fire department fleet. We had 40 people injured by bullets, probably more, but that was the number I think that was transported to the hospital. So the speed with which everybody arrived and helped. I know I'm looking at the screen here, Lake Bluff, Vernon Hills, Morton Grove, Buffalo Grove. I saw police cars from all of those communities. Skokie, I know you guys were here, Glencoe, everybody came out. So I just want to say thank you. And I want you all to, when you talk to your municipal elected officials or staff, please pass along my thanks.
Thank you, Kim. Jenny Futterman from Go Green Highland Park, would you like to add anything?
Jenny said she didn't have anything to add.
Okay, how about LaGrange, Lake Bluff, Lake Forest, and Lakewood, starting with LaGrange? Okay, Lake Bluff, Green Mines, Lake Bluff, Forest Bluff. Lake Bluff, Lake Forest. All right, Carrie Gaspin, new name, Lakewood. Okay, Morton Grove, Naperville, Northbrook, and Northfield. Morton Grove.
Yeah, hey everybody, good afternoon. Just some quick updates. Morton Grove has our upcoming Sustainability Expo on September 10th. It'll be from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is our 2nd year doing it. Last year we had a great turnout. We're hoping to have even better. So we would love to see some people from other communities coming out to support sustainable business, and we have all kinds of great presenters. We are still trying to figure out if we're going to do the electric car show again this year. I might be reaching out to some of you because I know that some of you help coordinate that as well. From our Go Green Morton Grove group, we have a new partnership with our Parks District. We have started planting native gardens in front of every time that a sign is replaced at our parks. So we started at Oketo Park. We planted it last fall, and now we will be maintaining that as the Go Green group. In addition, we already have native gardens planted at some places, but they're not well maintained because the staff at the Park District doesn't know how to maintain them. So we have volunteered ourselves to be the maintenance crew. So we will be going out and maintaining these native gardens so they look beautiful and people are interested in them. And also every time we do this, people come out and say, hey, what are you guys doing? What's this about? And we get more people to come and volunteer. And then the last thing is I'm interested to learn if anyone has done a lending library with their Go Green groups or in their municipality, because we have a lot of resources locally and we would like to learn how to start sharing these resources with each other. So we'll often have in discussions, someone mention a book that they're interested in. And I'm just wondering if any other community has done this already. And if so, raise your hand, I'll reach out to you because we'd like to start creating a lending library for sustainable books or just things people are reading that they'd like others to get interested in.
Great. That's also a great idea to partner with your local library to see whether they are willing to have an area, display area for sustainability books, and you could then help put out really great books for them.
Yeah,
okay, so
we do have that.
You got that too.
This is outside the library system if anyone's interested.
Okay, perfect.
Did you do a Fix It Cafe or bath?
Yeah, so we did we copied an Evanston event, and that was a repair cafe, which we haven't been able to continue because of COVID, but we'd like to, which is where you bring, you find volunteers, and there are so many people who love to fix stuff, and people bring and you fix things with them, learning how to do it. It was wildly popular. So we're hoping to do another repair cafe. If you Google it, it's a big trend. Okay, so anyone from Naperville? Catherine Clarkin is very active in Naperville. If she's still on, would you like to say a few words?
And Chris Murphy, I thought, was Naperville.
He may have signed on after. This is the registration list an hour before the event. Tessa, we've already heard from you in Northbrook. You're a staff. Anyone from Go Green Northbrook want to speak up?
Hi, this is Sheetal. So, in addition to what Tessa mentioned, I mean, truly GGN has been focused on community education in partner with the village and library, and just, to help the village move the needle for sustainability efforts. So we have a lot of community programs in the works with the library and the village, and, focused on zero waste, like solar power hour, followed by our solar power tour. Then we also have a field trip to waste management in September, if anyone is interested in joining. And then we have a panel discussion at the library with waste management and village officials. And hopefully, we'll have a larger reach, across Northbrook for that panel. And the goal again is to increase the conversion of recycling, right now we are only at 10-20% of our waste that truly gets recycled. So, that's really some of the key initiatives that's going on with GGN right now.
And you're in the process of, go ahead.
Sorry, it's Bernadette. I just want to jump in quickly to support Sheetal there. Bernadette from Northbrook. We also are extremely concerned about the development on the Glenview side of the street, on the Willowshire property, the Allstate building. It really was the three Glenview meetings in 3 weeks was pushing this through, the rezoning through at a speed that has not been witnessed anywhere locally recently. And it was really community activists on the Northbrook side and the Glenview side that notified the community and supported that big turnout at the meeting. But we're extremely concerned about many of the environmental and green issues that are being brushed aside. And we support Greener Glenview and everything they're doing on that side. Also, just to add to what Sheetal said, we've got a full vegetable gardening program in August. You're all invited. It's at Northbrook Library and you can register there. And Going Zero Waste, it's a discussion group also at the library. Everyone's invited. Thank you.
Yeah. So
Great.
I've lost my voice a little, but I think one concern, as what's put in the chat for us also is that too many initiatives seem to be passed by village officials without the concern for sustainability measures.
Yeah, well, thank you. You know what, this happened all the time before. There were citizens groups that were watching and helping to share our opinions. Also, the combined efforts of Northbrook and Glenview to be talking about this big development of this campus. It shows just the power of the fact that this group has helped people connect with other people in adjacent communities and in the region. So thanks for working together on that. All right. Oh, also, can you tell me, Sherry, you had a great program on recycling myths and realities. Was that recorded? This is in Glenview. That would be for Cook County. Was that recorded?
Yes, it was recorded and I sent the link to you and to Kim this morning.
Okay.
Hopefully you'll post it on the Go Green Illinois website. The speakers were the executive director of SWANK, Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County, the education and outreach director, and the operator of Groot's Materials Recovery Facility. And then we also had a speaker from the village and a wonderful speaker from the Park District as well, talk about what they're doing with respect to recycling. So it's an hour and 45-minute program, but it's well worth watching. And SWANK, for those of you who are in Cook County, you may know about SWANK, but it represents 23 communities. So
Right,
they help
so
negotiate contracts and a lot of other things.
Right. This is a good example of if you want to educate your community members and you're in the Swank community, you know, you can put the link out of their program because most of the information is going to be relevant to your community. So with zero work, zero cost, you can share that information, you know, through your newsletter or however you do that. Okay.
Correct.
So now we're, let's see, Morton Grove, I think did I already call on you? Yes. Northfield, I'm not sure we have anyone. Trudy Gibbs is with Northfield. Not sure what's happening in, I'm not sure she's still on. Next, we go to Oak Park. Trudy, speak up if you want to say something. Oak Park and Oak Park, Austin and Park Ridge. Anyone in those three communities want to sign on? Okay, Park, go ahead.
Unprecedented. Unprecedented. Everybody always speaks.
I know. Okay, Prospect Heights. Dana Severston, that is a new name. We have a Lucas Severston who's staff in Wilmette. Dana, Prospect Heights, anything you want to add? All right, how about Rolling Meadows or Riverwoods?
I have something.
Okay, that's Riverwoods, Lori Brightcroft.
Riverwoods, yep. We will have a village garage sale where residents can come and do their garage sale thing on August the 20th. I believe it starts at 9 a.m., goes till about 3. We are going to have another Recycle-O-Rama on October the 1st, starting around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and that will have a variety of things such as sports equipment, textiles, shoes, and probably some other interesting collectibles. And we're also doing an Art in the Woods event with brushwood, and we don't have a date for that, but it probably will be in August or September.
Okay, great. Rolling Meadows, let's see, Rolling Meadows or Schaumburg. We've heard a lot from Schaumburg, but if there's anyone in a community-based citizen, Rolling Meadows or Schaumburg? Okay, anyone here with Go Green Skokie? That group, as James said, got very involved, and there's nothing like a hot topic that helps you focus and get some energy. I don't think we have anyone from, we might Charlie Sachs.
No.
Okay. All right, Cheryl Watson, who signed on South Side, maybe South Side of Chicago. We also have a North Side of Chicago group that started. So Cheryl, if you'd like to say anything. Okay. Vernon Hills, Lincolnshire, Seema Keshav.
Hello, everyone. Firstly, I just want to welcome Merlan Rampel. She, as I think most of you know, works for SWOCO, but she's also a very active member of Go Green Vernon Hills in Lincolnshire. So welcome, Merlan. So the summer's been slow. We're continuing to work with SWOCO as well as 7 Generations Ahead to bring commercial composting to our District 103 schools. We have the approval from our superintendent. So if everything goes according to plan, we hope to start in August, diverting the food waste in the cafeteria away from the landfills. We've also started planning for doing a solar tour, the first one in Vernon Hills. So I met with our village manager a couple of weeks ago. The one hurdle we have right now is that they're not able to provide us a list of the residents that have solar on their roof. They said that they only have electric permits and not solar permits, so they're not able to they don't have the information. So I have to somehow, I do know a couple of people with solar panels, and hopefully, you know, we should be able to get a list from a few of the people that we know. So that's in the works. Also, Go Green Vernon Hills in Lincolnshire is a member of the Coalition for Plastic Reduction. And this is basically a coalition of organizations across Illinois, such as the Illinois Environmental Council, the Shed Aquarium, Chicago River, and many such other groups working on policies to restrict and reduce single-use plastics. And they have a talk in Chicago on Thursday, microplastics in our body and in our waters, and what we should know about it. And we have somebody from the Shed Aquarium, as well as IEC and Illinois Illinois Sustainable Technology that will be presenting at the talk, and we're co-sponsoring it as well. It is in the city, but I'll put the information there. So if anybody is down there on Thursday at 6:30, please come. And one of the last things that I will say is that, you know, we've had a few conversations with our village about starting like a sustainability commission, which hasn't gone anywhere yet. But one of the things that we were able to do was we were able to get, and this was Kim and Beth, your recommendation, that if they're not ready to start a commission, have them join the Greenest Region Compact, which they did in February of this year. So, but you know, one of the things that Merlan and I struggle with is we feel like we have a great public works department that's very environmentally conscious, but we feel like, you know, the impetus for doing something on the sustainability side keeps coming from our group, but we don't have much of a voting say, or, you know, we don't understand everything that the village is doing. So that's just it's difficult. So that's all. Thank you.
It's interesting to see in some communities, it's the task force, the sustainability task force that's really driving things. And then in communities like yours, you don't even have a group like that. And it does fall on your shoulders. So kudos to all of you for keeping this moving. I realize we have someone here from Brookfield, and it was not on my registration list. So could we hear from Brookfield, please?
Hi, I'll keep it quick. So we in Brookfield, we're already part of the Greenest Region, and we in the Brookfield Conservation Commission, because I'm in both, have just wrapped up our internal sustainability planning and are just about to find our champions in our village departments and in the public. So this meeting has been really, really helpful right where we're at. So I just wanted to express my gratitude to that. We also have our annual Meet the Creek event that is August 25th, where we showcase animals and natural resources in our Oak Savannah and Salt Creek in the area. And that's all I got.
Okay, great. So glad to see that you're all working on down there in Brookfield. Winnetka, Liz Kunkel, apologies for being at the end of the alphabet. Again, Liz Kunkel from Winnetka.
I guess I should move to a different community. So we have a lot going on in Winnetka. We have been working on our comprehensive plan process at the village level. Tonight happens to be a meeting where kind of the next draft, which is really an outline of the comprehensive plan, will be presented to the village council. I'm participating in that process, both as a just general member of the community, but also specifically through Go Green Winnetka, and even more specifically as both an environmental commissioner and a plan commissioner. So I'm very involved in the process, both in general and trying to incorporate sustainability across the board, which is going so far so well, I will say. So good things happening there in the village. And then in Go Green Winnetka, we interestingly have formed committees over the last just couple of months to focus on a lot of different substantive issues. And I think what's interesting is that they kind of align with ones we just heard about from Schaumburg and Glencoe. And I'm actually going to think about realigning our committees to align even more closely with the ones in Schaumburg and Glencoe. So I appreciate hearing about that structure. And then within Go Green Winnetka, our next big events coming up are we're doing our second annual native plant sale on Saturday, September 10th from 9 to 11 a.m. Following in Go Green Wilmette's footsteps, walking in their footsteps, and specifically doing a fall sale to serve that need and meet that market. So like I said, we're excited to do our second one. And then we also are planning a very small version of a solar tour 2 weeks later on the 24th. Our so our energy system in Winnetka is very unique. And so it's important to be able to have solar installations in Winnetka shown to people, because our incentives and the process about going about it is just very different. So we're excited to be doing that for the first time. And it was a takeaway from the last meeting. I basically, listening to the last meeting made me decide to do the solar tour, because Beth said, you know, you can do a tour with one house. And I was like, great, we have one house. We're done. Okay, good. We can do that. So we're doing that. And then the last thing I'll say is on behalf of the Go Green Reads book group, we met last night. It was our first in-person meeting at the bookstall since March 2020. We were grateful, obviously, to have it in person in general, but also really excited because we had an author visit, and the author was a man named Dan Lamb, Lambe, who is the CEO of the Arbor Day Foundation. And he's been in that role for 17 years after growing up in Lincoln, Nebraska, where the Arbor Day Foundation is located. So he really grew up like planting trees and is a great person in that role. So it was a wonderfully robust, you know, lively conversation, our first in person in a while, like I said. And then our next event will be on Monday, September 19th. We'll keep it fully virtual for right now, unless an author visit pops up, but assuming it's just a discussion, it will stay on the Zoom platform. And you can leave a note in the chat if you'd like any information, and I will let you know. I'll send you the Zoom link, but we're going to be discussing cradle to cradle.
Okay, I think we've lost her in her.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Liz. That is, she's inviting any of you to invite your people to the Go Green Reads book group. So now with a report from Wilmette, we're having our sustainable yard tour this on the 17th. You are all welcome to come. It is free. We are highlighting yards where people are creating habitat, healthy natural yards with beneficial trees, insects, water management program. So please do come join us in Wilmette from 9 to 1 o'clock this Sunday. We're going to be at a festival booth. It's a really easy way to get your community out front of your group, in front of the community. So we're going to be at the festival booth this weekend. Our park district has finally hired a woman who really knows native plants, and she's phenomenal. And so if your park district doesn't have someone on staff that understands the importance of native plants and knows how to direct a crew, that's something you can start pushing for. We are going to have a hazardous waste collection on the 24th of September, and we're talking to our village about trying to figure out if we can add a collection for dirty, old lawn care equipment, old gas-powered leaf blowers, and old gas mowers, so that they don't simply get put into somebody else's hands. How do we get them out of the system as people upgrade to cleaner electric? We have 2 summer interns and a college intern. If your group hasn't considered an intern, we have a great boilerplate description for you to help recruit them. We are having a solar tour on the 24th of September, but we're making it a renewable energy day. You are welcome to copy that. We're going to have the solar tour. We're going to have an EV car display and a cool bikes display, EV bikes plus cargo bikes. And we also have 2 geothermal installations that we're going to highlight. We do habitat work days, we do beach cleanups all summer, but our environmental commission has not even met for months, and there's no meeting on the schedule. So that gives you some idea. We've been working for 16 years here in Wilmette, and our sustainability task force is not as active as we would like to see it. They certainly don't have the action component that Glencoe has. I'm envious of that. So if you have not been called on and you would like to say something, we have some other guests. We've got Zach Wertz from the Chicago Region Trees Initiative. We've got someone from Swelco. Please speak up, unmute, and just introduce yourself. We've got 8 more minutes. Anybody want to speak up? Yep, we've got Zach Wertz from Chicago Region Trees Initiative.
Thanks so much. As you just heard, I'm Zach Wertz. I'm the Chicago Region Trees Initiative Community Manager at the Morton Arboretum. And I want to let you all know about a grant opportunity that's going to be coming up. I'm actually finalizing the application sheet now, so I'm hoping to release it next week or the week after, so I can send that info to Beth once it's ready. But if your community that you are working with is interested in tree inventories, urban forest management plans, tree plantings, or updates to your tree protection ordinances, we have funding available up to $25,000 through partnership with IDNR and the USDA Forest Service. So I'll drop my email in the chat. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And just so you know, those grants are available to local units of government. So as Go Green entities, you would want to encourage your local community, forest preserve district, park district, or township, county, whatever local government you're working with to apply, and you can be kind of a co-applicant on those. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope to send you all some information very soon.
Just an endorsement, Glencoe just got through doing that process with you guys, and we got a great report. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. Would anyone else like to speak up? Just unmute yourself and launch in. Or add in the chat. Kim, is there anything that you would like to add?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, we might actually end 5 minutes early. I want to thank all of you this busy. If you could read the chat, there's a lot going on in the chat as well. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. We are part of a growing team that is truly helping Chicagoland as a region be as sustainable as possible. You know, in light of what happened in Highland Park last week, it is incredibly hard to stay focused on this work when there is such heartbreaking and devastating things happening around us. So special thoughts and prayers and support going out to Kim and her Highland Park community. For the rest of you, thank you for your doing all you can for this planet and our future. I believe we're going to we have a leaders only meeting every other month, but I believe we'll take an August break. So we will be back with another program in September. That will be second Tuesday. That will be the 13th of September with a topic to be determined. So if you have any suggestions, contact Kim or me. And if you want to share this program with anyone else, you can find it. You'll find it on the Go Green Illinois YouTube channel by tomorrow. And so, Kim, if you want to say goodbye, I'll then stop the recording.
Goodbye. It's a new to start and 5 minutes early.
Okay. Enjoy the summer. Bye-bye.
Thanks much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.